Thanks, Carol. Okay, can just give me a thumbs up if everybody can see the screen. Good to go. Thanks, Harold. Wonderful. So we'll get started. Barb, if you'd like to get started, we'll move on to the first screen, and we can speak to our wonderful organization called Cybera.
Sure, Mary. Thanks so much for the introduction. Just want to give you a heads up. We can see your desktop, and I'm not sure if you can put it in present mode, which would make the slides just a little bit bigger. I'll let you work on that, or we can just leave it as is. It's fine. There we go. Thank you. It increases it a little bit. So I want to just give everybody a little bit of an overview about the organization Cybera, what we are, and how we came to be. I won't go into too much detail because the focus of the presentation is around ShareIT, but I did want to give you just an overview about the organization functions itself. So what we are is a research education networking organization. So we're the provincial entity here in Alberta, and as you can see by this map, we have partners all across Canada. And together we run the research education network that connects our institutions to institutions around the world. And that really allows for research, innovation, education, big data to transfer across that network. It's run very separately and uniquely than your normal commercial transit networks. And really that's to encourage big data flows and really help research and innovation globally in terms of Canada's role on that stage. And so together we form the National Research Education Network. So Cybera, in its unique proposition, is we are the only organization like us in Alberta. Our core members, so we're a member-driven not-for-profit organization, and our core members include the, Mary, actually, if you can pop ahead.
Yeah.
Include our all 20, all of our post-secondary institutions, a good portion of our K-12 school districts here in the province of Alberta, as well as a handful of other not-for-profit organizations and government departments within the province of Alberta. And the reason that these organizations connect to us is because they leverage our service in one way or another, or services in one way or another, because what we do is we stand things up that benefit our member community. And ShareIT is a great example of that, and that's what Mary's going to talk about today. But those services encompass everything from connecting our institutions via the network, leveraging that network to think about how do we do open source technology, cloud computing solutions, look at next technology enablement practices, and what can drive them forward to improve tech adoption within those organizations. We also often advocate in terms of a power and strength of our neutrality around provincial consultations regarding ICT policy. Sometimes we get in front of the Federal Commission for the Canadian Radio Telecommunication to advocate and intervene on things like broadband connectivity, because what we really want to see and help enable is a connected Alberta and make sure that everybody has access to the digital economy. So we often tackle it on all these fronts. Promoting IT in various different buckets. Security, of course, is another huge priority for a lot of our members, so we focus on that. And with that, I will pass it off to Mary and her team to talk more specifically about the ShareIT program, which is a really valuable program that we run on behalf of the public sector institutions that are Cybera members. So Mary, with that, I'll send it back to you guys.
Thanks, Barb. So I'm going to start with a little story. About a week ago, myself and Harold Berry, who's co-presenting here, we had the opportunity to attend a masterclass hosted by Municipal World. And there was about 17 different municipalities across Canada that was participating in this masterclass. And primarily, I believe that the participants were Chief Administrative Officers, CAOs. Had to find out that acronym, wasn't familiar with it. But we had the opportunity for a couple days to join this masterclass, and the masterclass was geared on speaking to the sustainability of shared services and collaboration. So I wanted to share a couple of polls that were taken during that class that really is significant and relevant to what we're speaking about today. And I thought it was very interesting about the cohesion or similarity and commonalities from what we saw from the municipalities that were attending the class to the education institutions that participate in the ShareIT program. So if you can note here, the top two in this question, what collaboration aims are prevalent in your organization? So it was very interesting that the top two, obviously not a big shocker, came out as saving money. Obviously, we're all interested in saving money, and to avoid duplication, effort, or resources. So it was really interesting. We're going to speak to that today about how ShareIT addresses those top two aims and goals for collaboration. In addition to that, another poll that was taken was, in addition to the successes and the aims and goals of a shared services program or collaboration, there's always going to be barriers. And so from this poll, we noticed that the two top barriers that were shared with municipalities that were on that class was, there's a fear of loss of control when you're in a collaborative effort or you're sharing resources or sharing best practices and whatnot, because you're so embedded in your own world, in your own, we say institution, but your own municipality and your own team. And possibly there was efforts before that, there was attempts to collaborate and share services, but for many reasons, it didn't work out well. So these are not uncommon to what we faced, especially at the beginning when we started the ShareIT program. So I thought I would just bring this up because they're very relevant to what we're going to be speaking to today. So ShareIT. So ShareIT is the Alberta ShareIT program is a shared collaborative program that's overseen and driven by Alberta's higher education sector. And Cybera has the opportunity in the last 5 years since the program's been running to be able to manage this program on behalf of the higher education members. So ShareIT is a combination of formal collaboration, professional development training, hosting services, and a big thrust of it and a big area of emphasis that we focus on is on shared procurement. So we will be talking a majority about the shared procurement program that's been in place for 5 years. With that, I wanted to share with you some strategic goals. These goals were set at the very beginning of the program, and we've all the institutions and Cybera itself as the neutral entity really stays focused on this, and it really anchors the program is to have these strategic goals in place. And so really it's about the quality and the scope that we can deliver as a group versus each institution going out for for procurement or services on their own. So it's improving the quality and scope through that collaboration and knowledge sharing. The second one is obviously we want to reduce that service cost through economies of scale spanning across Alberta, and again focusing this program with the higher education sector. And what we found throughout the last 5 years is that the real value is that the promotion of collaboration between the members, whether it's through our tactical working groups that we work with, our ad hoc committees that are formed through our steering committee. It's really the real value is driven through that collaboration between post-secondary members. So again, addressing that those barriers and those aims, the program is addressing putting together proper governance processes, building the trust and relationships, lots of communications and open and transparency that all feed up into these strategic goals.
Mary, just really quickly, since it's a municipal bunch, PSI is post-secondary institution.
Thank you, Harold.
Just to be sure.
Yes, if I ever do an acronym, please stop me. I try really hard to not do that. So thank you, Harold.
Yeah.
Guiding principles that really were tested at the beginning of the program through our pilot, throughout operations, that stay in place, that create the sustainability of the program, is this program is an opt-in, opt-out. It's not mandated. This is all on a volunteer basis. And this was really tested through the pilot. Are we really going to be able to have a group of post-secondary institutes opt into services that maybe a bit of a change for them? They're not used to collaborating on such a large scale. And it stays true to this day. Each service that we offer, each project is fully opt-in, opt-out. and it's one of the successful guiding principles that we follow. We really wanted to put a model that can efficiently and collaboratively provide full IT sourcing and service delivery through opportunity identification of, hey, let's look at networking hardware, end user computing hardware, or telephony services. Can we come together as a group and standardize requirements as best as we can to go out for a service that will provide improvement and higher quality services. This program is fully governed by the Alberta Post-Secondary Institutes, and each institution has one vote or one voice per institution. So it works really, really well. The smaller the institutions and the large institutions, they all have an equal voice in what we move forward with in the award that we ultimately result in through shared procurement, and they really, really appreciate this. So it's no longer the big guys just driving every decision. Everyone has an equal voice. And it is a self-sustainable program. There is no external funding come through. This is fully paid by the institutions, and it's a not-for-profit, because obviously Cybera. So we provide the services based on the subscription fees that the post-secondaries pay. So those are some of our guiding principles that are stayed true since we started the pilot onto operations. So a little bit of the history of ShareIT. So back in 2016, 2015, a group of 12 post-secondary institutes came together and created a framework. And within this framework, a governance was put together, as well as a full service delivery lifecycle. And they weren't ready to fully commit to this. So we said, why don't we pilot this? We've never come together in such a large collaboration. We don't know if this is going to work. We don't know if everybody's going to come to the table and share information. So that's when Cybera was tasked to become the management entity. And as a management entity, it's our role to manage and facilitate all of the collaborative efforts and run the shared procurement program for them. And it's really cool because we have that neutral voice. We don't have a decision factor in any of the procurements that we move forward with. We don't evaluate. It is all based on the members that participate. So we started a pilot and we ran it for a year, and we had some ups and downs, but it was truly a great learning experience. And going back to those barriers that I showed you from the poll from the Municipal World Masterclass, we had those barriers. There was people that were possibly, this isn't going to work. We're not going to collaborate. They're not going to share information. But the focus for our team was to really drill down and move the program forward and have those 2 or 3 or 4 champions to really jump in from the beginning. And through that pilot, we found that those barriers slipped away. And by slipping away, we were able to successfully secure 2 master agreements through 2 requests for proposals. That was done on quite a large scale. And that was through a lot of open and transparency. Again, the key is having that neutral entity like Cybera. Our role was to fully service this for them, and we were there to help and support them in any way. After that pilot, we did move into operations in April 2017, and because of the size and the success of that collaborative effort in the pilot, ShareIT as the Alberta Higher Education Program won a Collaboration of the Year award at the Canadian Higher Education IT Conference that's overseen by the Canadian University Council of CIOs. There, I did not use an acronym, but it's called CUCIO. That took a lot of work to do. So we're really proud of that. And there was so many players involved. And one of the biggest things that came out of it was that, hey, we love collaborating. We love sharing our knowledge. It only improves our teams and our services. So those barriers, again, started slipping away. In August of 2017, because Cybera has a large scope of K-12 school boards as members, and the K-12 school boards often see commonalities in what we're procuring. So we opened up the master agreements for any K-12 Cybera member to leverage. And to this day, we have, I believe we have about 31 K-12 members that do leverage our agreements. So that really drove the economies of scale, even though the higher education still oversees and governs the program. And then we just moved on. We keep growing up. We're past 50 members now. And because of the success of the governance and the framework that the higher education institutions put in place for the collaborative effort, we have moved beyond shared procurement, which I'll get into in a couple minutes. So this is a visual picture of how our governance works and the different committees that we have that make this program sustainable and successful. So there's 4 components of the Alberta ShareIT program, but we're really just focusing on the 2 on the left. Our Alberta ShareIT program is overseen by an oversight committee. And the oversight committee is comprised of all 26 post-secondary institutes across Alberta, and there's a seat from each post-secondary on this oversight committee, and typically it's the senior IT leader or the chief information officer. So this is a standing strategic committee that doesn't get involved in the tactical operations of the program, but really sets the principles, and it sets the budget, and they are the ones who decide on all the different projects that we move forward. So again, they're the decision makers. Then we get into the actual functionality of the program. We have a ShareIT advisory committee that is a subset of the oversight committee. These individuals work with Cybera very closely as the operations management team, and they advise, provide input and guidance. We always want to have that touch point with the post-secondaries as we move through operations of our program to make sure we're staying on course, and they redirect us when needed, and they provide the voice from their external committees into us that is relevant to shared procurement or shared collaboration. So shared procurement, we also have a procurement committee, and this is comprised of 8 to 9 individuals from the post-secondary in the areas of procurement departments. So these are the subject matter experts that their whole role is to procure on behalf of the institutions. And this committee advises and provides guidance with us to make sure that, when we're going out for shared procurement, we're representing the MASH sector. So we need to follow those public procurement policies and procedures, Canadian trade agreements. And so they provide guidance and make sure we're up to date on all of those policies and procedures. And as you can see at the bottom, Cybera sits at the bottom here, just emphasizing that we're the neutral component and we manage this on behalf of the higher education sector. We also have a shared collaboration component to Alberta ShareIT that has grown from the success of the procurement program. And that involves formal collaboration of all 26 post-secondary institutions at the CIO level. And we host a plethora of professional development training webinars and workshops through our professional development training program. So diving a little bit deeper down into governance, and I'm always talking about right now at the governance level, it's really key when you have a collaborative program through multiple organizations that proper governance is in place. And I don't mean there's a ton of red tape, but there needs to be a structure involved and everybody knows their roles and responsibilities. So again, the oversight committee sits to the far left. They oversee the entire program. We did speak to the procurement committee as an advisory committee. Harold Berry is the lead procurement officer, and he's also the chairperson of the procurement committee. So he's our direct conduit to that, to those individuals. And when we're involved in the shared procurement process, Cybera runs 4 different areas, and we manage this and drive this forward for the participating members. So when an opportunity is identified that's saying, hey, let's come together and say, let's go out as a group to see if we can procure chatbots or networking hardware. And so when we can identify an area that we can possibly standardize those requirements between a diverse group of post-secondary institutes and and justify a number so we can move forward as a group, we move into what we call the service design and development. So these three phases here, the service design and development and the valuation and acquisitions portion of a procurement process. This is where we bring in working groups. And to be honest with you, this is the really huge value part of ShareIT. These working groups are subject matter experts that are volunteered by the participating members that provide all of the content and the scope and the meat of what we put into our sourcing documents when we go out to procurement. And from what we've heard over the last 4 to 5 years is that they really value coming together as a group, because we might have 9 to 10 to 12 individuals from participating members that are sharing knowledge at this tactical level. So in addition to having the voice of the participating members through the working groups put into the procurements that we do go out for open competition, they learn so much from sharing with their cohorts and co-associates that if they didn't have a collaborative program in place, they wouldn't be able to do that. They're so embedded in their own institution because they're so busy doing their work, that coming together and sharing that knowledge, it really grows their skills base. So that's a little visual of our ShareIT governance program. And I'm going to hand it over to Harold at this point to talk a little bit about the framework and the relationship purposed agreement that we have in place with our members that really provides that strength to this program and to build the confidence and trust that we have in our members.
Yeah, so as Mary says, this is a really relationship purpose agreement. It sets the ground rules for the relationship in terms of how the parties are agreeing to work with each other. It's a ShareIT Framework MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Is really nice during that MISA masterclass that Mary and I attended. I believe it was only last week. That this was spoken to really with similar intention. The Municipal World Masterclass suggested we include protocols such as communications to share information, consultation, ask for advice, coordination, take others into account, cooperations, introduce the idea, see who wants to play, share resources, collaboration, all those things such as delegating power, resources, risk, that type of thing. So when developing a framework, think about how you're going to be working together and incorporating this into the MOU up front at the beginning. Our MOU was signed by the post-secondaries and the K-12 school boards. It lays out the responsibilities of Cybera. What does a management entity do, and what does the actual member does? Defines the service expectations and clarifies the liability, and also creates confidentiality arrangements. Those are very important because we do eventually get into our RFPs and contracts and awards and things like that. And of course, as Mary mentioned at the outset, it's a total opt-in, opt-out, and that's carried in the ShareIT framework as well. It's not mandated that individuals who are identified as participating members or even working group members, it's not mandated that they absolutely have to be involved in each procurement. Now, we want your best intention, that's true, because we want to represent things well to the vendors, but that opt-in, opt-out option gives a great deal of comfort to some organizations. Okay. The process of working together. So just at a very high level, how we actually work together on the ground is that the projects that we tackle are approved by the oversight committee. They decide, we don't decide. Just for example, back in early May, I believe it was, we went to an oversight committee meeting and we had a couple of projects identified as, hey, we think we should tackle these based upon what we've heard from the membership and what we see out there. And they looked at it, they thought, well, yeah, it's important, but what's really important right now in May of 2020 is online proctoring, because we have to deliver tests to our students and we have to be able to grade tests and remotely type of thing. So that's what online proctoring is. So they actually brought another thing on the table, and we actually expedited an online proctoring RFP and awarded that contract in September. So they're all approved by the oversight committee. After it's approved by the oversight committee, we call for participating members. We say, okay, who amongst you on the PSIs want to participate in this initiative? And they say, we do, or we're not interested. And of those participating members, we issue a call out for working group participants. So those are the technical subject matter experts who might know a little bit about chatbots or online proctoring or telephony or whatever. And they'll often cough up a working group expert to work with us for a period of month and a half, 2 months. We have meetings probably every other week type thing, and we develop specs and requirements as we go along. And that's where a lot of the interaction that Mary says takes place, where individuals are learning from each other. Oh, the U of A is doing this, but Mount Royal University is doing that, and a lot of the discussions are quite interesting there. So they worked for a while and developed the specs and requirements, and we're overseeing that with a project manager. And we eventually pull all the documents together, all the purchasing documents, the invitation documents, anything else we're going to include with a contract document, that type of thing. We include that and go out to posting. We post, we evaluate, individual evaluations, group evaluations, and we work towards an award. After the award and the contract is signed, what allows participating members to actually take advantage of the opportunity is something called a participation agreement. So they sign a participation agreement that says, yes, this is my institution, I'm going to take advantage of this chatbots contract type thing. And that's just kind of closes the loop there. We have some verbiage in there that says, okay, as a participating member, you're contracting with XYZ company under this master agreement. XYZ company will report back to Cybera, your usage and purchases and that type of thing. And so we can just gather some metrics like that. So we gather metrics on the aggregate. We don't individualize metrics, and we can forward the success of the program back to the community. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a note here is that when you take on a project like this and people see it's such a huge undertaking, and I just wanted to emphasize that Cybera is the management entity and what we like the purchasing entity on behalf of the ShareIT members. We really do the thrust of the work, and that's what they really appreciate is that everybody has, they're so busy in their day-to-day work cycles is that not having a neutral entity or a centralized organization that can take on the thrust of that work and put these documents together and excuse me, drive the program forward. If you rely on one institution or multiple institutions or organizations to do it side of desk, I think that's in the past where it really falls apart. And so I just wanted to emphasize the key is to have that trusted entity, and in this case Cybera, to put that together and do the I would say the grunt work and to put it all together and take that knowledge and put it into documentation that will drive quality services and hardware that they can consume at a lower rate than they can on their own. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is. And I'm not pitching Cybera here, but I think people have to realize that it is a lot of work, and that's why there's some fear involved in shared resourcing and shared services and collaboration and shared procurement, is that it's going to be so much work. So we do our very best to keep the amount of work down to as minimum as possible and take on whatever we can for them without having our specific voice involved with that. I just wanted to add that point there.
Yeah, this is visually just kind of what I've gone through. So this is the Cybera member and provider relationship. So the vendor and Cybera sign a master agreement at the end of the RFP process. The master agreement talks about terms and conditions, pricing structure, that type of thing, talks about risk and liability. A participation agreement is signed by the ShareIT member and Cybera, and once it's fully executed, the vendor is made aware of this, and it allows the member to purchase under that agreement. The vendor and the ShareIT participating member can negotiate some minor terms, such as I am going to pay for all these services by a P card or something like this, or they may overlay a little bit more on service level agreements, that type of thing. But we've been taking on increasing responsibility of laying out the service agreement levels. Yeah, and because that flow of that information I mentioned about the purchases and that type of thing, the vendor provides Cybera with quarterly reports, and we report to our community on the aggregate of how successful the relationship is. Okay.
Thanks, Harold. And contract management is a huge role that we play on behalf of the ShareIT membership when we have master agreements in place. Our role does not end when we put the master agreement in place. So we spend every 3 months, every quarter, we meet with all of the vendors that we have awarded master agreements with, and we have a discussion. And it's not just about the master agreements, it's about how can we drive further value from those agreements that are put in place for the members in areas of knowledge building or skills or economies of scale and things like that. So we put a lot of work in building that relationship and having a relationship and being that conduit between the participating members and the vendors. Both sides see a win-win situation. The vendors that we work with, and they're not partners, they're third-party providers, and we keep that neutral voice, but we offer them a platform to speak to the members. And often, and what's happened through that contract management relationship is we've built a really successful professional development and training program. So we bring in third-party providers, and we bring in our different institutions, and from those, from the relationship, we've been able to host a plethora of technical workshops, webinars, leadership skills, soft skills, and things like that. And so the vendors see a huge value in that. We're a great touch point to many versus them, working individually with those different organizations. So contract management is a really big portion of the role of the ShareIT program in procurement. All right, so now we're down to that number one area, now to the meat, the KPIs, the metrics, and again, the number one area of the goal of collaboration, economies of scale, cost savings, cost efficiencies. So I wanted to share some metrics with you that we have been able to, as a program, for within the higher education and the K-12 through ShareIT, we've the higher education and K-12 members have observed over $18 million in savings in the last 4 years. Since April 2017, we started operations, and this is up to date as of September 2020. So it is a great value program when it comes to direct economies of scale. The procurement spend, the total spend that has occurred through our different agreements that we have in place is just over $36 million. And on over to the right-hand side, and most recently in the last 6 to 8 months, because of the ability of ShareIT to bring the numbers together and to aggregate the numbers, we've driven down the cost of training when it comes to certification workshops and things like that. And we've been able to drive just over $52,000 in savings for training for those members. And I'm sure you can all agree when budgets get cut and there's restrictions and things like that, professional development and training often is the first that falls off the bandwagon. So wherever we can support them to continue to build their training and knowledge, we do that. So a little bit more specifics here with regards to our metrics. We currently have 56 of the Cybera K-12 and post-secondary members as participating ShareIT members. So we started with 14 on the pilot, and we've grown in the last 3.5 years up to 56 members. So it is quite sustainable, and it has grown, and it really falls down to that relationship, the governance we have in place, the proper framework, the openness, the transparency, all of those specific items that have been developed through the last 4 years and through lessons learned and painful lessons learned sometimes. We've been able to grow, and we're still growing in that area. The courses that we have delivered through our professional development and training program, it's just over 30 at this point. We've had over 900 participants across Alberta, and in often cases we open this up to different provinces across Canada as well. So where we can identify a common want and need in the area of knowledge building, we open this up to our different organizations, and as Barb had mentioned before, the community across Canada as part of the National Research and Education Network. We have a great relationship with all of those. So wherever we can invite anyone that can, really get value from what we can offer, we do that. So those are a little bit about our metrics, which we're very excited to share. And this is showing you a list of what we currently have in place through the ShareIT Shared Procurement Program. We've been able to secure 13 master agreements in place that we currently manage for the education sector. And here's a list of the different areas that we've been responsible for procuring as a group. So it's we started off as hardware. We started with the pilot with our end user computing and our networking hardware. And there we've grown to offer things from anywhere from security services to licensing to software. And as Harold had mentioned, we've gone into online proctoring, which was a project that was really an example of how we can flex in times like COVID. So typically, a project that is on such a large scale like ShareIT, it takes between about 6 months to 10, maybe up to 13 months to do, because it is a large effort. But in this case, we were able to work together and drive the program to secure something in 4 months. So we were able to flex the way our processes work within the structure of public procurement, and be able to provide a service that was really needed right away. So there's a list of what we're offering. Moving forward, we're continuing to drive forward into the catalog of offering security. It's a huge area for everyone concerned, and we're currently in flight for firewalls, phishing, security awareness training, and a really cool innovative procurement that Deb Chernuski, who's on our call right now, is a project lead for. It's called Chatbots. So this is an example of something very innovative that we're driving, help drive forward for the post-secondary institutions.
So one other thing on that slide before you move off it, Mary, is it's interesting, you show 37 on end user computing hardware and services, the desktop laptops and things like that. That's 37 post-secondary institutions and K-12s that didn't have to develop an RFP themselves and go out to market themselves. They didn't have to have their purchasing group meet with their technical people, talk about what are the specs of the machines that you want, that type of thing, develop all the documents, go out and post and all that kind of stuff. What happened instead was that technical person worked with other technical people for a period of 2 months, 3 months, or whatever, and we did all that background work. So if you start thinking about how much is involved in putting together procurement on an institutional, a municipal level, to start talking about the tech person's time, the procurement person's time, you're looking at pushing 10 grand type thing, 5 to 10 grand. So that's 37 times that. Those savings aren't caught up in our metrics, but they're there nevertheless.
Thanks, Harold. All right, so I just wanted to show you another aspect that's key to collaborative efforts, whether it's with regards to shared procurement, shared resources, shared services, knowledge sharing, sharing best practices, whatever it is in that the aim or goal through collaboration, it's really key to have communications. And I'm very happy that our VP of External Affairs, Megan Hampel, is on the call because she oversees the communications department with Cybera. So I'm very happy that Megan can hear me say this, but communications is so key when it comes to working on such a large collaborative effort. And anywhere there's something like a change or there's discomfort, as long as you keep those open communications up, that's where you build the trust in the relationship. And I think that's an area that we've really focused on and continue to focus on. And one example here is that through the various workings with our members, it's like, we want to have a place that we can talk and ask questions, and it's just not through email. And then I can pose a question out there that a group of individuals can maybe respond to and learn from. So we created a communications platform just recently, and we utilized the Slack application for this. So all of the members are invited to this workspace or channel, hope I'm saying the right words here, workspace or channel, where they can pose questions and share knowledge and things like that. And it's open and transparent for all of the members. And we often put a lot of our communications on this platform so we can hit a large number of individuals. But in addition to this channel, again, communications are key. And every quarter at minimum, we communicate our metrics, everything that's reported from our vendor relationship and our master agreements are shared with the individual members and as an aggregate. We do not share confidential information, of course, but as an aggregate, this is shared with the community as well. And I think that's a big piece of value when it comes to the ShareIT program. We also have another application that we use for, and some people use SharePoint, whatnot, but whatever it is, it's have that common library of knowledge where members can access information. So everything from our working group meetings to presentations to confidential documentation, all of our templates that we use for our sourcing documentation, all of our policies and procedures, anything like that is of value and the members would like access to, we put it in one portal. So we don't push information out through an email. We give access to our members once they have signed the memorandum of understanding, because it has a confidentiality aspect to it. And here's a full library of knowledge. So oftentimes institutions will go in and say, hey, ShareIT did an RFX, or request for whatever, request for a proposal or request for quote. That's what we say, RFX. And I'd really like to see their templates, because their templates were built from best practice from multiple organizations. So often institutions that, hey, maybe the ShareIT agreement doesn't fit our needs, that's fine. So they didn't opt in, but we give them access to all of our documents that they can use on their own. So again, this is having that open and transparent portal for documentation sharing, as well as communications, is really key in a collaborative effort.
Mary, just a time check, it's 10:50.
Awesome, okay. All right, so thank you, Deb. So that ends our presentation. I just really wanted to quote a couple things that I feel is really important. So community, whether it's within the municipalities, whether it's in higher education, K-12s, other not-for-profits, whatever it is, the power comes from three things. It comes from the collaboration, and you have to be open and kind of lean into that discomfort sometimes if you're not used to collaborating. It really, truly is worth the effort. Knowledge sharing, huge, and data intelligence. So having those metrics, having those KPIs that continue to drive the community of collaboration forward is really key. So I was watching last night a TED Talks from Brene Brown. You've probably all heard of her. Wonderful speaker and researcher in sociology. And she was talking about vulnerability. And one thing that I heard from her that really hit home is that when you're in a situation that maybe it's new to you, or you're unsure if it's gonna work, it's kind of worth the effort is lean into that discomfort of change and have that trust and willingness, and anchor the mindset that you're willing to collaborate, and wonderful things can happen from it. And I'm very happy that we had the opportunity to share the ShareIT program with all of you today from Cybera. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Mary. So anybody, if you want to just put your hand up, we can unmute you and you can ask your question, or you could just put it through the Q&A. However you guys want to ask them questions would be great.